Woo! Hey guys, it's me, Blush Cameron, and I want to welcome you to the very first episode of my podcast, which is called Blush Cameron's New Podcast. It is the newest podcast that there is, and it's one where I talk to my friends, mostly artists and musicians, and we talk about their history playing music or making stuff or about whatever else comes up. And today the first episode is with my friend Brennan Greaves, formerly of the band Pity Sex, from Ann Arbor, Michigan, which, as some people might know, that's where I'm from too. So there was a lot to talk about. I guess that's pretty much it for the intro. Please enjoy. Please bear with me as I learn how to do this. I have a bunch of episodes already recorded, so there will be more where this came from. Thanks for listening.
Do you have specific questions prepared?
Yeah, I mean, we'll just talk. I have some, I have bullet points of, what to go through. First of all, I don't know. I wanted to ask if you remember how we know each other. Because I don't remember when we first met.
Yeah, that's a great question.
But it's a fucking long time ago.
That I
now,
also
right?
don't think I have a specific answer to.
Because
I don't know.
I started coming around the metal frat, which is where. Is it fair to say you started playing shows at the frat, or what was your first band first of all?
Oh, I have played plenty of shows before ever going to the metal frat. They were just, the kind of places when you're a teenager in high school that you play.
Okay.
So
yeah.
I had played in a bunch of different bands with the same people, basically from 6th or 7th grade on. But, as we just grew up real fast through those years, we just were constantly changing the name of the band and the style of the band and the songs we were trying to cover and play at I don't know, our friends shitty house parties that nobody went to. That sort of stuff.
Yeah.
So I guess the longest iteration of that was kind of a screamo band we had in high school.
What was that band called?
I almost hesitate to say it's
okay.
This is the
dark.
Some serious.
The dark
These
past.
are some serious cringe years.
This is non-canon history.
Yeah, it's non-canon. This is. I don't know if any of that stuff is on the internet still.
Okay.
There was definitely a MySpace page for it. It was that time, but maybe it's gone. Who knows?
Well, if anybody.
But anyways, we played we played some graduation parties.
Nice.
We played. There was an internet cafe out in Canton, Michigan.
MySpace cafe?
Different than that. I can't remember the name of it exactly. But it was an internet cafe off Ford Road in Canton.
Damn, I wonder if we were going to the same shows.
Probably. I met a few people back then when I was in high school playing shows at those sorts of teen hang spots, cafes and youth center.
Oh yeah.
sort of shows.
Definitely.
Even a few church functions, just wherever. I don't know. We would just play in the basement and then occasionally go out and do something like that.
So
it never really went too far beyond that, but those were like my first experiences of like playing shows.
Yeah. When did you start playing?
Maybe once or twice driving out to like Lansing or Kalamazoo to play something, but that was really about it.
Right. So you started playing like guitar first?
Yeah. I always played guitar in all those bands when we were,
And so
you know,
you're doing it as a
just playing
teenager.
whatever. Yeah,
How did
yeah.
you get into like alternative and like hardcore and whatnot?
Um, I got a guitar probably around age 12 or 13, an electric guitar. Um, and that's around the same time, you know, I don't know, I guess there were a few different like streams of influence going on at that time. There was a mainstream influence, like bands like The Strokes and stuff were pretty huge.
Oh yeah.
Bands like Interpol and that sort of stuff was like on TV and like in advertising and whatnot. So I definitely listened to those bands like White Stripes and stuff. Those were like early bands that made me want to like play guitar and learn songs. And
Uh-huh.
so there's that. But I mean, I have an older brother. He's like 3.5 years older than me. And he was a pretty big like musical influence as far as just like, stealing CDs out of his car or his room, or you know, even just him directly telling me what to check out. I always wanted to sort of do what he was doing.
Oh yeah.
And he got into like, new metal, into like punk, into like hardcore and like metal and all those different things like over his high school years. So I definitely had that influence as well going on. And then older older brothers of friends of mine, people I was playing music with, also, having an influence. So, Sean, who I grew up playing music with, drummer in Pity Sex, his older brother Brian, listened to a lot of punk and hardcore that I probably would not have discovered otherwise.
Interesting.
So yeah, it was probably around late middle school that sort of stuff was going on.
Yeah, it's definitely cool how like new metal was really like the gateway for a lot of people, even for me. Like the band that besides Linkin Park, but like for me, it was Deftones. Like really opened my mind to like heavy music and like screaming in music. And after that, it's that's all I wanted to listen to was like screaming.
Yeah, Deftones were one of those bands for sure. I remember seeing them perform on David Letterman's late night show, and definitely having my mind blown a little bit there.
Yeah.
But yeah, my brother would go. He would go to the library near our house and like rent CDs, and they had bands of that caliber, of that popularity available. So he would just bring them home and like put them onto the computer.
That's awesome.
So I definitely owe him, in some way for taking the time to like do that sort of stuff and show me a lot of bands. And
were you on MySpace?
yeah, I would definitely was a part of that whole thing when it was going on. I mean, it was really the only thing available like it at the time. So
Yeah, true.
it was a big deal to like just flaunt what you were into and throw it in people's faces. And as soon as they opened up your personal web page there,
they got all your favorites.
They would just get blasted in the face with whatever the fuck you were into.
Yeah, I mean that stuff was a lot.
Music starts going, but I mean it was great. I saw something just the other day, kind of talking about Tom in MySpace and how altruistic he was, how he taught quite a few people basic HTML and like really didn't try to like fuck with people's privacy or turn it into like what a lot of social media is now today. Pretty bankrupt morally and kind of just messed up.
Yeah, anyways. For sure. I mean, it's scary. MySpace was
just a place. It was just a place for friends.
A more innocent time for sure. In some ways, I suppose. So yeah, you were playing. You learned about this, like alternative music through your brother and your Sean's older brother,
Yes.
and then playing music in high school, and then you guys got to college, which is so I didn't mean to say that like you were a noob when you went to
Hang
metal
on, sorry,
frat.
dude. Your end is breaking up a little bit again.
Hey,
I didn't
check.
quite.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
All
Well,
right.
anyways, for people that don't know, metal frat is a fraternity in Ann Arbor associated with the U of M, and it's like kind of, I don't know if it's pseudo fraternity, like it's a frat, but it's not. It doesn't do like the Greek stuff or something.
I mean, as far as I know, it definitely did at one time. You know, it operated under like Greek letters and was, up through most of like the '90s into the 2000s. It was part of like the Greek, whatever it is, council. I don't know,
Mm-mm.
but they made like a decision to like leave that at some point, to kind of operate under a bit of their own set of rules. But there's other Sigma Phi chapters all over the country, and they're part of like a larger, Sigma Phi fraternal order. But there's been some pretty major changes going on, especially more recently with opening up to, be a little more inclusive to all genders. And
Yeah,
I know there's been a pretty big fight between some of the older active alumni and some of the younger, current members of the house, the people that are making it happen and getting new people interested and keeping it alive. Yeah, it's been a whole crazy thing.
yeah.
But
So
it's changed a lot over the years. But at one point, it was like a pretty traditional fraternity. I think at some point in the '90s, it kind of I think it started to move more to like an alternative way of existing as far as fraternities go. And then yeah, it's I guess
do you
somewhere
know when
probably
they?
early to mid 2000s they started doing parties where live music was a main element of the party. And I think just as the interests of the people involved in the house changed over time, just more and more people were interested in heavy music. So that's the kind of music that was booked and performed at the parties. And over time, that went from parties to more run like a DIY venue. And for a few years there, yeah, it kind of operated as like a pretty pop and DIY hardcore space.
Oh yeah, that was. I remember my first show going to the metal frat. I was probably like 17, and it was the Swellers were playing, and I remember seeing Sean near the door, and Sean who drummed in Pity Sex, and we just were too like intimidated to like actually go in because like we're not even 18, and like we're like are we allowed to be here? So we just left. But yeah, uh, yeah, definitely a lot of fond memories at that place, and that's when in college you started Direwolf, right?
Right. Yeah.
Direwolf is a hardcore band that you're in with Sean, again from Pity
Yeah. So I
Sex.
mean, just to like, I guess make it clear, like I was never like a brother or
Yeah, oh
official
yeah,
member
should
of the
mention
metal
that. Yeah,
frat. I
sure.
never went to U of M either.
Yeah, same here.
I went to
I,
Eastern Michigan University in Ypsilanti, uh, next city over.
yeah, yeah,
But yeah, spent a lot of time. Had close friends that I played music with that were members of the fraternity, and you spent a short amount of time living in the house over summer break when a lot of people move out. They kind of will rent out some spaces to people who are interested and people who may be affiliated with the house in some way. So I guess as far as affiliation goes, that's what was up. But yeah, when my friends that I played music with, Sean and Michael, people I had grown up with, were pretty close with over the years. When they started to get more active with the house, I kind of just by association, became more active in the house.
Mm-hmm.
And around that time, is when we started up that band Dire Wolf. And kind of as the house grew, as the shows got bigger, that band kind of grew with it. It was a kind of a nice way to like put your band's name
Oh yeah.
on the map. You can just, I mean, they were basically running things and booking all the shows. So we got to hop on quite a few pretty sick shows at that house.
Do you remember like what the sickest show was around then? Does anything stand out to you?
I mean, there were some that got pretty wild, but weren't like at capacity or anything. And then there were other shows where it was like, over capacity. Just so many people showed up, it was insane. So I guess as far as those go, there was a Weekend Nacho show that happened at the house. They're like kind of a power violence-y, down-tuned hardcore metal band from Chicago, but they played the house, and it got very rowdy. It was a good time though. They're a great band. They don't play anymore, but they're definitely a good one. And I would say as far as just like insane attendance, they managed to get Andrew WK to play a set.
Oh yeah.
At the house, and that one really got out of hand. Yeah, there was just too many people, and
That one was insane.
It just took forever to like get things rolling and to like get that dude there and down in that room. I remember a couple people kind of getting sick from the heat. It was gnarly.
Couldn't stay down that space.
But it happened. I mean, it did happen.
So, Pity Sex was like 2010. Is that when it started? 2011.
Probably accurate to say. Things started forming around maybe late 2010.
Because that's probably around the time that we at least knew of each other's existence.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you asked earlier, like, if I remember exactly when we had met each other, and it's hard to say, but if I'm going to take an educated guess here, it's probably through Chris at some point at the house when he had joined.
Definitely.
Yeah, I would say so. At some point when, Dire Wolf had done that final show at the house, plans for a new band were like forming, but like it wasn't going to be as heavy as that band. That band was more of like a metallic hardcore sound. And I think we were all interested in doing something different. And just our tastes in general were expanding into more like, I don't know, non-heavy territory.
Mm-hmm.
So that I think Chris had started Brave Bird somewhere around that time, 2010. And I mean, you were doing music at that time too. Like,
oh yeah,
that's kind of around the time, like right before we had made that collective webpage.
Mm-hmm.
That online presence.
The Ann Arbor Emo Collective, which was
the Emo Collective,
Brave Bird,
right, yeah.
Pity Sex, and then the Fail Son, Gerald Field, which was my band.
Gerald Field, correct. It was those bands, and then I think eventually a couple more.
Youth Novel.
Yeah, Youth Novel on there as well. I mean, I didn't think much of it at the time, to be honest with you. Like, I mean, I was playing guitar in Brave Bird.
You were?
And for a time, yeah.
Oh.
We were doing practice. I mean Chris was he was a main creative force in that band, but there were a lot of people playing music at that time, so people were kind of shifting around.
Yeah, and eventually
Terry became that main guitar player in that band, and that's when Sean and I started writing stuff for Pity Sex. That first demo.
And Chris recorded.
And that's yeah. That's how that split cassette came about. It was like the demo that we had written, as a 3-piece band, Sean, Brandon, and I, and then Brave Birds EP that they had written and put out, just online. So we put those on cassette. It's got, it's the pic of Chris and I dressed up as Batman.
Yeah,
I don't even have a copy of that anymore. I think we only did like 50 of them. And
that was the very first release.
They're gone. They're out there. Yeah.
Before.
But that was the first official release of I think maybe both bands, if I'm not mistaken.
Dark World was 2011?
2012.
Really? That's crazy.
Yeah.
My memory, I feel like it's earlier, because I saw that
we tracked it. Yeah, 2012. Well, maybe we had started things in late 2011. It's possible, but we finished recording it. Brittany had moved to the area to start school, and like kind of in that recording process is when she started writing stuff to finish that EP, and then she added vocals to that record as well. So that was all happening at that time. We got hit up by, not long after, just putting it online on a Bandcamp, throwing it on the websites of choice at the time, like a Tumblr, Bandcamp, whatever else we had going. We got hit up by a label in, a
different label.
Minneapolis. Pretty sure it was Minneapolis.
You're not talking about Run for Cover, obviously.
No. This was before we signed to Run for Cover. This was a label in Minneapolis called Forward Records. It's just like a couple dudes that were like, had some money and were really into music, and it was pretty like low profile, especially at the time. I didn't really know any of the releases they had done, even though they had done a few. I mean, we listened to them, and musically some of it was like sort of up our alley, but they were nice people, and they, no official contract was signed, but they offered to press like something like 400 or 500 copies of Dark World on vinyl on 12-inch.
Crazy.
It's like a 12-inch EP. We would get a percentage of that. They would get a percentage. We would sell them, and that would be it. Just like go our separate ways or whatever. Or if it went well, like maybe do something in the future. But yeah, we did like a self-booked tour that ended with like a show somewhere around Minneapolis. We picked up those records from those guys and played like this really fucking weird club. They kind of like, yeah, I don't know. I appreciate the fact that they took an interest in and pressed that stuff.
Yeah.
But the whole thing was just like slightly bizarre, a little strange, especially for me at the time.
Why is that?
It was just weird to like have people like want to front and like make something like that happen. Mm-hmm. They were fairly eccentric when we met them. Mm-hmm. The show itself we played was with a few of the other bands, quote unquote, that were signed to their label.
Oh God.
And it was just like a weird kind of wacky show with pretty low attendance, and it's clear they had just like shelled out quite a bit to like try to make it seem like sort of extravagant.
Okay, I'm starting to get it. I get the picture. That's
right.
Very
and
awkward.
Then it all culminated with one of the other bands breaking a microphone during their set, and the owners of the club basically like refusing to hand over the money at the end of the night. Some argument went down, and the whole thing was just like, all right, we're gonna grab these nice records you pressed for us, and we're gonna head home now. So thanks for the hospitality. See you later.
Well, how do you feel about Dark World these days? Have you listened to it recently at all?
I mean, to be honest, I haven't. I've moved on in a lot of ways. From like all the music, really.
I see.
It really kind of exists on its own at this point. I've gone back and forth, over the years, listening to it and feeling pretty good about it, listening to it and feeling like it's not quite what I remember, but I think that happens with everybody and the things they create.
Yeah, I will say
Those memories change over time.
I don't want to jump too far ahead. I want to ask about how Run for Cover happened, but I will say like the jump in production and songwriting from Dark World to Feast of Love is pretty crazy. So how did we'll get to that. How did Run for Cover hit you guys up?
I think it was somewhere around 2012. We booked, it was a roughly like 3-week tour out to California and then back home. So we kind of cut down through the Midwest and then headed west and then looped back around and then headed back, into the Midwest towards the Chicago, Great Lakes area.
Mm-hmm.
And about, I don't know, 2 days into that self-booked tour that we had done, we had some vinyl records that we could sell. We had Dark World. We were kind of ruminating on what we were going to do for another piece, but at that point, it was just like we just wanted to do a tour like that. Brittany was still in school. Sean and I were working coffee. Brandon was, I think, also working coffee at that time. Just service shit. So we just wanted to go and like do a tour to the best of our abilities at that time, with what we had. So we had that pressing from Forward. Sean over the years booking at the Metal Frat had a decent amount of contacts around the country. Brittany also was booking in Grand Rapids, doing DIY stuff either out of her own basement or different locations in Grand Rapids. So, she had plenty of connections herself. So they just together kind of made it happen. And a few days into that one, we got hit up by Run for Cover with an offer to do a record deal. All those details enclosed and to like, take some time and read it over and consider it and like get back to them. But that was wild. Yeah, we kind of just like put it to the side for a second because we were just like dealing with basically our first like real DIY tour that was more than just like an extended weekend to a neighboring state and back or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it was kind of a lot at the moment. I don't know how much personal stuff I'm going to end up divulging throughout all this stuff. I don't know what you're all curious about, but at that time too, Brittany was going through a pretty heavy personal loss that prevented her from playing the first, I don't know, maybe like 10 or so shows of that tour. She met up with us later on after,
interesting,
processing and dealing with that whole thing back home. So yeah, it was wild. There was that going on. We were playing those shows without her for the first leg of the tour. The online plays through the Bandcamp were increasing, so we were seeing like a rise there. And then all of a sudden we get hit up by, Run for Cover to talk about, signing and doing that thing. So there was a lot going on in a pretty short amount of time.
Yeah.
So we finished that tour. Brittany met up with us later on, and we had like a pretty serious talk about like everything that was happening. And at about the halfway point of that tour, when we were in California, we decided to agree to the contract and did all that stuff. And we were staying with a friend in LA, and we shot a few pictures in like the parking lot of their apartment building and sent them over for them to use. And they put together a quick thing, and it was basically like that. Like, wow. Just within a matter of like a few weeks, we had things rolling with them.
Can't remember what other bands were big on Run for Cover at the time. Was Title Fight on there?
Yeah, Title Fight for sure was probably the biggest band. I can't remember which record they were like touring off of and promoting at the time, but they were a big one. Tiger Straw was a big one.
Mm-hmm.
Continued to be a big one. Citizen for sure was like on the rise, and we signed right around the same time, I think, as Turnover as well.
Okay.
Yeah. But I think Citizen, I mean, they definitely had a part in Jeff at the label, hearing our first record and hearing our demo,
Oh,
and
they're from Michigan too,
just
right?
they're
Ohio?
they're from Ohio. They're from Toledo, so they're close. I mean,
Yeah.
those guys were coming up to shows all the time, and we were playing down that way too. So, I wouldn't say we were friends, but we were aware of each other's music at that time, and we were mutually, into what the other was doing. So I think for sure put in a good word and like recommended that stuff to Jeff at the label,
Mm-hmm.
and helped facilitate that in some way.
That's cool.
But you know, band was booking stuff and operating on some level like independently. So
And
I think
so,
when a label sees that, it definitely helps with like any sort of decision they want to make, that the band is willing to put in work on their own without any sort of extra support.
right, they see that you're already
Yeah,
like,
some kind of work ethic.
yeah, you're already kind of like building, you know.
All right, can we break for a quick second? I
Yeah.
really have to use the restroom.
Yeah, go for it.
All right. Hello,
Yo,
I'm back.
welcome back.
Thanks for waiting.
Yeah, no problem. So yeah, it sounds crazy, like a crazy time getting signed.
I mean, yeah, looking back, it kind of was. Yeah.
How did Feast of Love was the next record?
Right.
Can you talk about how that happened?
We finished that tour, so that was like a 3-week thing. Definitely like the most substantial tour situation I think any of us have been a part of, for sure. And it wasn't like a total bust. Like it was rough at times, but we came home like feeling okay about things. And I mean, obviously the situation with Run for Cover was exciting. So by the time we got home from that tour, our situation had changed entirely. So around that time, started making plans for an LP to record with Will Yip. I mean, that was all in the works through Run for Cover, just because they had a relationship with him already. He had already put out some Title Fight stuff and had worked with Tiger's Jaw and was doing a lot of stuff with their band, so it was just kind of part of the deal.
Mm-hmm.
We set out a block of time to go out to Philly, stay with some friends, and start recording in Conshohocken, just outside of Philadelphia at Studio 4 with Will. But before that happened, so we got home and started writing around that time. So we were all living at a house in Carytown in Ann Arbor at that point. Birdie was, doing school. We were all working jobs around town. At that point, I was working at the print shop at VG Kids, so I was fairly busy with that sort of stuff, but was given time off here and there enough to at least keep things going with the music. So we booked a tour with Katie Crutchfield, with Waxahachie. Brittany, had been friends with her from years back, and we had just signed with Run for Cover. So it just kind of worked out at the time. She was doing like a short solo tour down to Florida and then back up the East Coast. So we did that tour together. It was a lot of smaller spaces, some clubs. Some medium-sized clubs is probably about as big as it got, but I mean, it was a really, really fun time. Getting to know her better, like through Britty for sure. And then eventually playing a show in Philly where she was living at the time with all her bandmates, her sister as well in a house in West Philly. Was playing in a band called Swearin' at the time. I think they actually are getting back together and putting out some new music, which is pretty exciting. Yeah, they're a pretty sweet Philly punk band at the time.
Oh yeah.
So they were all in a house. Sam Cook Parrott from Radiator Hospital, he had just moved out that way from Philly. So we crashed at their place in Philadelphia on that tour for like a few days when we played, the New York and Philly dates of that tour with Katie, and made some like really important connections in Philadelphia before going out there to start recording that first release with Run for Cover. So it really, timing wise, couldn't have been better to like do those shows with her and kind of get a little bit plugged into like that Philly indie scene, while also signing and starting to record with Run for Cover, which I would say at the time was definitely more pop punk oriented than anything else.
Yep.
I mean, I think the shoegaze influence we had going on really wasn't like prominent on their label at the time. But yeah, anyways.
Well, how was recording with Will at that time, and so yeah, like the main thing that I noticed was listening to Dark World and Feast of Love back to back was not just the production, which is obvious, but the songwriting.
Right.
Like it was crazy, pumped up the second time around. How did that happen?
Definitely.
Do you remember?
I mean, we went into the recording process with, I would say, a pretty well fleshed out record. It's like song wise, only because we felt like we wouldn't be able to get it done if things weren't fully written before we got there. Like if we had left things open ended and gone into the studio with like a half written record or like plans to like finish things there,
Which bands
I don't know
do,
really what,
by the way. Sorry,
they do all the time. Yeah, plenty of bands go in purposefully to write in the studio, but I mean, just with school schedules and work schedules for us, it wasn't going to happen at the time. So we wrote a lot just at the house in Carytown. We were all under this roof, so any time one or two of us were home, we could go downstairs and work on stuff. So there was a lot of preparation that went on in that house.
Yeah, I think it really shows.
Yeah, and prior to that, Dark World, there's a decent time gap between the two. So I would definitely say, Brittany having a bigger hand in the collaboration and the songwriting, because when she was on board with the band, we had already started writing Dark World.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was a much more collaborative process when we wrote everything for Feast of Love. We were living under the same roof, It just made for a better collaborative process. I would say vocally, I think that was where we had to do the most work in the studio. I mean, we had, melodies and lyrics and everything written, but went into the studio, I think, with the mindset that we were open for things to change, if need be, only because we had never worked with a producer before. Like we had never worked with somebody to record it that way. I mean, we recorded with Chris, and I think he filled that role in a way when we recorded Dark World.
Chris from Braveheart.
Chris from Braveheart, Chris Liu, who recorded Dark World at the Metal Frat. I mean, he definitely used his skills and his creativity to make that record happen. But I don't know, going into Studio 4, it's just a whole different experience. So I think we went into it with like a little bit of a mindset of like go with the flow to some extent.
Did a lot change or no?
I would say vocally, just because Will had so much more experience than us with like harmonizing and stuff, we worked with him to add, extra vocal tracks that I think really helped that record pop off a lot more. But musically, I mean, it was really I think structurally all there
The songs
before
were there.
we went into the studio. Yeah. There was only one part I remember us finishing up while we were already out in Philly. You know, I remember sitting down in Sam's bedroom in West Philly to like finish up a couple parts, but that's all that we kind of had to change. So it was nice to just like get that foundation musically down real quick, and then fine tune it and have plenty of time to work. You know, almost like as a trio, like Sean, Britty, and myself, because Sean throughout the band's career wrote all the lyrics and a good chunk of the melodies that I sang for the band. So all of like the male vocals you hear on record, that's him writing
Really?
creatively and me performing it.
He wrote the melodies?
For a good part of it, yeah.
Wow,
He would
interesting.
at least, have a bass idea in his head when he wrote his lyrics of like what it might be, and then we would work together. And then once we got to the studio, I mean, Britty was writing all of her own lyrics and melodies for her songs, but it was a real process for us to get the vocals and melodies finished. You know, working Sean, Britty, and myself and Will in the studio to like wrap all that stuff up.
Yeah, that's like a really unique way of doing things and like a very kind of specific like connectivity there between you guys to make it happen.
Yeah,
Very specific like
it is very specific, and
brand of
I
a
mean,
band.
it's just a matter of circumstance, and it just to me it just made the most sense at the time, like especially the relationship between Sean and I and the vocal lyrics. You know, he has his degree in creative writing and poetry. I have my
Right.
degree in like visual art, basically at graphic design. Visual art. So I spearheaded a lot of the art direction for the band. I wrote a lot of the music, but it just made more sense for him to take on that challenge of writing lyrics and stuff as a creative writer.
And you
And then
guys
once Britty joined the band, we shifted things to make it work between all three of us. But I think it ended up being a unique situation that made for a unique style on the records.
you guys were like on the same page obviously of like pop songwriting, like verse chorus stuff, because it's interesting to me at the time and in the scene that we were both in, I feel like a lot of people shied away from like pop songwriting. Like people were into like pop punk and melodies, but it wasn't as common. I feel like.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, all of us included, we were coming out of like the hardcore scene. Britty was playing in a shoegaze band before moving to Ann Arbor. She was in the band Procession that had some level of notoriety, especially around Grand Rapids and stuff. I mean, she herself just had a level of notoriety for being a part of the DIY scene. But yeah, we were just coming from a different scene. But once we all started hanging out, playing music together, throwing stuff on in the car, hanging out, or at home, or wherever it was, like playing the stuff that we were really truly influenced by. I was like, oh, there's definitely a lot of things here that there's a lot of crossover here between all of us of like a big 90s pop influence, a big 90s alternative influence, stuff we grew up listening to when we were younger.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever was on the radio, like, so yeah, a heavy pop influence underneath all of the stuff we as like maybe teenagers and young adults like really championed, the punk rock stuff and like the the hardcore stuff that is cool to like at the time.
Uh-huh.
There was something else going on, influences going on that we kind of discovered as we got to know each other.
That's cool.
Yeah, so it's like we all want to play. We're influenced by emo bands, we're influenced by punk bands, we're influenced by indie rock and stuff, but at the base of all of our favorite bands is like this pop structure. So we didn't stray, I wouldn't say too far from it, really. Just made sense to incorporate that into like all of our other influences.
Yeah, totally. So I don't know how much time we want to spend talking about the Adventures split, but because it's getting a little long, but I do want to cover everything since we're here. How did the Adventures split happen? Was that just through Run for Cover, or you guys were friends with the Code Orange kids
that
at
release? Yeah, so around, man, so a lot of I'm not the best with like remembering specific like dates and whatnot. So I think some of the stuff may have overlapped. I may get a thing or two wrong. So like, I apologize if I do, but
No
I do. So Code Orange kids at the time, they were touring fairly often. Britty had met them playing a show with Procession and Code Orange kids. And I just remember, we were living in a house together. I just remember her saying how good they were when she saw them, when Procession had played with them, and we should go check them out. So they came through and played a show in Lansing, probably somewhere around 2013, I want to say. So we went out basically as like a house to see them, and yeah, it really just blew me away. And that was like the first time I met all of them. But every time, we would head out east to play shows, we would crash in Pittsburgh on the way with, one of the members of that band. So just through like hardcore roots and stuff, like, and then Britty's old band playing kind of like a random show with this like young kind of like super aggressive hardcore band. Friendship kind of sprung up, and we would help each other book stuff or like find each other places to crash when we were touring. And Kimmy Hanauer, who does all the artwork for Code Orange, she was kind of on tour with them, with the band, helping out and whatnot. And that's when we met, probably around 2013, and eventually dated for the better part of like a year and a half, almost 2 years. So that kind of was like a long distance thing. She was between Baltimore and Pittsburgh for the tail end of school. From Pittsburgh originally, going to school in Baltimore. So she just grew up with all those guys. And when they started Adventures as sort of a side project band to Code Orange kids, that's when we were dating. So I was coming out to Pittsburgh as often as I could, really, just to see her and like hang out with all those guys. And when they signed to Run for Cover, they were doing kind of a series of split 7 inches at the time. And yeah, I don't know. It was just a time, I think, at that label where they were really anything. There was a lot of just like cool creative bands getting involved. So we just went for it and decided to do a split 7 inch, each doing an original song, each doing a cover, and just put it out through the label, just try to have fun with it. It was a fun project for Kimmy and I to work on together,
Yeah.
Going out at the time, playing in bands on the same label at the time, and then getting to create this 7 inch together. We collabed on all the artwork and whatnot. Yeah, it was a super fun and exciting time for me. Yeah.
That's cool. I mean, it's a great split. I really like the Acid Reflux song off of that one.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, I feel like that's definitely like a weirder Pity Sex track. But it's a fun one.
So here I have, you guys were like mostly touring from 2014 to like 2016, or were you taking a break? What was going on then?
We were touring pretty heavy. I mean, I'm missing things here and there. Like, there's definitely some gaps going on as far as tours and stuff. I mean, I didn't mention the first full U.S. tour we did after signing to Run for Cover was with The World is a Beautiful Place, and I'm No Longer Afraid to Die. So Jeff Horrible, who was playing guitar in that band at the time, was like the long-time booking agent of Pity Sex. He still now works as a booking agent. Yeah, Greg. Still works as a booking agent now. But his band at the time took us on tour, and that was a whole, eye-opening experience, opening for a much bigger band.
Mm-hmm.
That was right after Feast of Love came out, so there was a lot of hype going on at the time. So that was 2013, I want to say. That record came out. I don't know.
Yeah.
I might
Yeah,
have that wrong
I
too.
think that's right. Yeah.
Is that right? 2013.
2013. Yes. Yeah.
And from then, I mean, pretty much all the way up to 2016, with a few breaks in between for life shit. Finishing school for some of us, and just like relationship stuff, and moving around a little bit. We toured as much as we could, given all that other stuff that was going on.
Yeah, dude. I don't understand how bands at that level release an album every year.
It got stressful. It got really stressful at times, for sure, especially with the school schedules overlapping with band stuff. We were crazy sometimes trying to do all the stuff that we're trying to do. But it was like several full U.S. tours. We went to Australia 2 times. We did a tour in Japan. We went to the UK twice.
Did you do 2 Japan tours, or was the Japan tour the one that was near the end?
Yeah, the Japan tour that's the only time we went there was the last tours we did.
So
that last tour in Japan, the last tour in Australia, and then those last final shows the band played together in the UK.
Was White Hot Moon out at that time, or did that come out after you guys?
Oh yeah,
finished?
That was all. I mean, those were tour dates we had booked to promote White Hot Moon.
Okay, so White Hot Moon.
So we did a full U.S. tour off that record. That was the tour.
Birdie was there for those.
She was there for those shows. Yeah, so we had Power Bottom and Pedal opening for us on that tour.
Oh yeah, I remember that.
Mm-hmm.
So White Hot Moon was the third and final record.
Yeah.
How was it different creating that record compared to Feast of Love?
There wasn't even, it was weird. There wasn't a single point when all 4 of us were at the studio together because of scheduling conflicts. So writing it was definitely more tedious. I feel like, I don't know, I think deep down a lot of us felt like things were winding down a little bit, even while we were writing the record. So I think it comes through a little bit of like a bittersweet feeling, because I certainly didn't want to admit at the time, but even while you're writing the record, you feel things changing in the band, and like people have like plans that they want to follow through with in life, and it's getting harder and harder to make it all work. And that definitely reflected in like the whole creative process, like because of all of these different conflicts of interest, we were not even all in the studio at the same time. Mm-hmm. Sean and I went out early and tracked all of my guitars, all of his drums, and then Brandon came out over a long weekend and just like smashed out all his bass real fast. And then a couple of days later, Brittany came out and she did all her guitars and vocals in like a super quick amount of time. Like we really had to just like get in and get it done and get out. Like there was really no time to like cultivate like a mood or spend time together outside of the studio. Like there was a lot more time for that, I would say, recording Feast of Love.
See, I would have not really guessed that when I was re-listening to it. I felt like it was almost more solid of a record. Like,
I think we were able to produce it the way we did because of all the experience we had leading up to that point. For sure, we were much more proficient musicians, and I think just like a little bit more like cognizant songwriters too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it feels more mature.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's a little less like flashy, a little more thought out. Maybe a little less exciting, to be honest, but
yeah,
there's some stuff on there I'm extremely proud of, and there's some stuff on there that I feel like is maybe missed the mark a little bit, but
Yeah.
when you put something out like that, it takes on a life of its own, and I've had a few years of distance from all of that, so it took some time to process, but it's nice to just look back and know that we did some good things and we accomplished a lot. And,
Yeah, totally. I mean, it
and
basically
it seems like there's a decent staying power with those records from what I've seen online. So
totally
I'm
people.
glad people are still finding them and getting something out of them, and it's nice to just separate from that and maybe try to do some new things. And like, yeah, I'm
Yeah,
doing
I
a
want
lot
to
more art than music these days.
I want to talk about the stuff that you're doing now. But basically, to just cap off the pity sex stuff, it ended after you did like 2 more tours after White Hot Man, basically, and is that right?
Yeah, so we, that whole cycle was happening again, the album cycle. So we did that. We did the full U.S. tour with Pedal and Power Bottom. Came home from that tour, pretty tired and exhausted. Even up until that point, like just on a personal level, I definitely dealt with feelings of like being a bit of an imposter, and like, it was our first headlining U.S. tour, and some of the shows, like I don't know if Brady shared these feelings at all either, but they just didn't really feel like we were at the level we should be at, to be doing what we were doing. And I mean, in hindsight, like it's bullshit. Like you just do the things you want to do to the best of your ability.
Yeah,
And like nobody can really tell you anything.
yeah, totally.
I don't know. A lot of it's all just like, yeah, all just posturing
It definitely
and
is
quite a lot of bullshit. But
serious
at
amount
the
of
time,
bullshit.
it was really heavy for me. I didn't really feel like I was performing to the best of my abilities because I had those conflicting feelings inside of just like, yeah, I don't know, maybe not feeling good enough. Or
Did that play into you wanting to like end the band, or were you wanting to like keep it going and like try
no,
to?
I wouldn't say it did. It's something that I definitely I struggled with throughout. But it was never anything that got so bad that it made me want to end things. Like really, honestly, from a fairly young age, like that's all I really even wanted to do was like what we were doing. So it meant a lot to be doing it, and it just it made me want to like work through it and get better with it more than anything instead of like give up. But like I kind of mentioned earlier, people's interests were going in different directions. It got harder and harder to schedule things, and there was more and more pressure from the business side of all of it to just like keep it going and make people money, and we had people working for us, so there was a lot of pressure there to just like keep going in some way. But I think it reached kind of a breaking point for Britty, and after that full U.S. tour, we played a final show with her in Grand Rapids. We opened for Best Coast, and that was the last show she played with the band. We made an announcement not too long that she was like just gonna go on to like focus on school full time, and we had a fill-in, our friend Anthony Heibel, who played in the band Run Forever. We knew from a few years back. I don't know if you ever knew that band, but
No, I met Anthony though.
Pittsburgh indie band, yeah, indie kind of punk band. Wonderful people. We met them early on and did some early shows and touring with them. So he was just a close friend throughout the years. He really swooped in and just saved our butts because we were basically ready to cancel those international shows
Yeah, that would have
because
sucked.
it just wasn't going to work as a 3-piece.
Uh,
So it was a difficult time for everybody. It was a difficult time for me.
did you
Facing,
decide? Did you decide that the Japan tour was going to be the last tour before you went on it, or was it after you got back that you guys called it?
So we booked a handful of shows out to New York. We were gonna fly out from there, and those shows were kind of just like a test to just see how it felt, playing without Brady, having Anthony fill in, and pretty much just give Anthony, a few shows to like get used to to doing shit with the band, and then go, play the international dates. So we had a meeting in New York with, the manager of the band and some of the other people involved, and that was basically when it was like decided, like, yeah, it's probably like, we're probably not going to try to continue to do much once we got home from those international shows. So we reworked the set. Anthony crashed at my place for like a couple weeks beforehand. I taught him everything. We got together and practiced maybe 2 or 3 times with him, and then played those shows to New York and went to Japan, played that tour, went to Australia, did those shows, came home for about a week, and then went to the UK, and that was the final tour of the band. Yeah. I honestly didn't quite realize it was going to be the last shows we were going to play in UK. I kind of just felt like maybe we would turn it into something else or make something else happen.
Oh, yeah.
But once I got home and we kind of settled back down into things, I kind of realized pretty quickly everybody was ready to move on.
Oh, man. How did it feel for you?
It was a confusing time, for sure. Like, really, I did the college thing and I got my degree, but I was much more interested in just continuing to play music at that level. Like, it's really all I had wanted to do for quite a long time. So Brittany, she moved to LA to start grad school at UCLA, and Brandon started his grad program at U of M. Sean moved out to LA and just continued to, work in coffee industry. And yeah, I've continued to work at the print shop and do all the custom color mixing and stuff, but there was a transitional period that was pretty depressing for me.
Oh yeah, I can imagine.
To go from like playing that much to basically playing nothing at all.
Well, you and Chris started Senpai shortly after that, right?
That's true. Yeah, that was kind of a brief side project band. We went in and recorded a 2-song demo at Studio 4 with Will over a weekend.
Yeah, those are 6 songs.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. But I don't know, to be honest, I don't know how well we were all getting along at that time. So
yeah,
I feel like it. We were too busy with Pity Sex to really give it the attention it needed.
Yeah, I guess that was 2015, wasn't it? That was like
2014. So that wasn't 2015
before Pity Sex had
so
ended
it was
entirely.
It was really at the height of when we were doing shit. Played a handful of shows that were fun.
Yeah, I think played that one with you guys.
I think that band had a lot of potential, but
it just wasn't the right timing.
It wasn't the right timing. You got to get the formula right, and time is a big part of it.
You got your second shot with Chris and myself too when we did Death Flags. After that was
that's true. That was fun.
Death Flags was like 2017.
That
was like a post-punk goth band.
So, I've continued to play music in some capacity. I gave it probably a year after Pity Sex, played his last show, to just focus on other shit and kind of sort myself out a little bit. Definitely.
Zone,
I've picked things up. Yeah,
played a hardcore band.
Playing bass in Zone was fun.
I sang.
Yes.
And then Goody Head as well is another one you've been doing.
Yeah, surprisingly, that's kind of been picking up a little steam too.
You guys got some new recordings?
Probably more than anything else, that's what I've been doing most regularly. Like I talked with you about, possibly trying to do some more heavy music, with people around here, but it doesn't seem like that's got too much momentum.
Dude, it's so hard
currently.
Especially
it's tough.
in Southeast Michigan, it's so hard to get anything going.
Yeah. So, I'm not giving up on playing heavy music in some kind of capacity, but right now it doesn't seem to be getting off the ground.
Well, what's the deal with new Goody Head music?
So Goody Head's been fun. It's a project I started actually with an ex of mine, uh, and our friend John, who you know as well,
John.
Sortino.
Oh, nice. I forgot he's playing in that, or he was playing in it.
Yeah, he was. So he helped us record a 2-song demo, and we wrote a couple songs with him on drums. Recorded it at his house in Water Hill in Ann Arbor, and just put those online. They're pretty rough, lo-fi demos, but it's been a lot of fun playing that music with those people. But then, so that was like, man, that was probably like late 2017, early 2018. We did that demo,
Yeah.
and John moved to Philly,
Yeah.
kind of around the same time you did.
Yeah, he had about a year on me.
Did he? Okay.
Yeah.
Right. So John moved to Philly, and I kind of just thought Goody Head was like done. No drummer. Things fizzled out pretty bad. We had those 2 songs online, but we weren't really doing anything. I was just like working my butt off at my job and trying to like do more artwork, like sort of pivot and like do painting. And I mean, I'm continuing to do that, and I'm like pretty dedicated to having some kind of art career.
Yeah, and I want to talk about the art stuff. I just want to cap off Goody Head because I know you had mentioned that Goody Head is active again and like you're doing stuff.
Yeah. So I basically thought things were dead with that project, but then we got hit up through the Bandcamp page by a band called Bear Call from San Francisco. They had a show booked at the Blind Pig in Ann Arbor and asked if we were still a band first and foremost, and if we were interested in opening that show for them. So kind of gave us a reason to like get our shit together and find somebody to play drums, and just at the very least, get a set together and play a show.
Yeah.
So we found a guy, Craig, play drums. He's a screen printer at VG Kids. He's a great drummer, cool guy. And
as cool as the VG Kids house band.
Kind of, yeah. I mean, Devin worked there for about a year. Craig and I are currently working there. So it's been fun. We practiced at a spot in Ipsy. We played that show and had a good time and had a decent turnout. So we're currently writing for some kind of EP, probably rework and re-record those demo songs, and we've got at least 3 or 4 in the works right now.
Cool.
And we'll see where it goes. I don't know.
People want to listen.
I don't know if it'll.
Sorry.
What's that?
I was just gonna plug the link. Goody Goddy head HEAD.bandcamp. Is that it?
No, you spelled it wrong. It's GOODY HEAD.bandcamp.com. So that's got some old demo recordings there. But hopefully in the next year, in 2020, we'll record some new music and get it out there. And I don't know. Right now, I just want to play some shows around Ann Arbor and have a good time, paint some paintings, and make a living.
Yeah. So you've been doing a lot of art. You had a gallery lately, is that right? Like a gallery showing?
Yeah. Earlier in the year, at the beginning of the summer. Even before that. So I guess winter into the spring, I was part of an artist residency through a nonprofit called The Hosting that our friend Anya runs. You can check that out online if you're interested at all in art residencies. They're doing good stuff.
The Hosting in Ipsy?
So anyways.
Was that
it's based out of Ipsy. Previously was based out of Ann Arbor in her apartment space, but she has a much bigger space in Ypsilanti now, gallery space with some art studios. So I was in one of those studios for a few months, painting, making stuff, and that kind of culminated in a gallery show at Olympia Skate Shop in Ypsilanti, kind of a non-traditional gallery space. I mean, it itself is a business. You know, it's a skate shop with kind of a skate area in the back. They've got several ramps, a garage space built out into a bit of a skate park area. So we hung all the paintings in that space and had a big opening night, and yeah, had a great turnout. And I sold a thing or two, and we did some print material as well. Since I work at a screen printing shop, so we made some T-shirts, some collaborative T-shirts, you know, between the skate shop and myself and the hosting, and sold out all those. So that was really encouraging. It definitely helped pull me out of like a weird time.
How would you like describe your style of art? Because I don't know how I would describe it.
I mean, I think it's pretty inspired by screen printing, like the industry that I work in first and foremost. I mean, I've worked in screen printing all through my music career, all through playing in bands, through college and that stuff. I've worked in some kind of art capacity. So after finishing college, I started working at the screen printing shop, and that's kind of been there for me as a way to make money throughout all the music I've done. In between tours, you know, they've welcomed me back to come and work, and so that's had a heavy influence on the fine art I've done outside of that job. Mm-hmm. Just kind of building up layers and texture. Yeah, I don't know. I guess it is a little bit harder to describe. It definitely has a pop element to it, but it has been evolving as well. Like I'm not working as much as I should be, but I hope that picks up once I get into this new studio space.
Yeah,
I'd like to just like take what I've done stylistically, which I guess anybody can check out on Instagram if they're curious. I run an account mostly just for my visual art now.
It's just Brennan Greaves, right? Your name?
Yeah, that's correct.
I'll post it somewhere when the episode goes up. One question I wanted to ask, we don't have to go on much longer because I think we're about the end of what there is to talk about.
Yeah. How long have we been talking?
An hour and 20 minutes, but like 10 of that was not,
Okay.
So it's not too bad.
I mean, that feels pretty good to me. I don't know. I definitely rambled.
No,
I probably got some information wrong. I'm sure I sound like an idiot.
No, dude. I think people will be glad to hear. Because I mean, this hasn't really been verbalized before. Like the kind of like timeline.
It's like dry as hell in my apartment, so I'm sure I sound nasally.
No, you sound.
I'm sure I probably said some things that are gonna piss some people off. I don't know. I mean, just disclaimer that this is all just from my perspective of how things went.
Oh yeah, of course. You didn't say anything controversial at all.
I tried to just be fair and like accurate from my perspective of things.
No, you sound like a king, dude. I
really do appreciate all those years. I feel very lucky to have been a part of all of that. Like.
No, yeah, I mean those records hold up.
And in hindsight, it makes me really happy that people still appreciate that music and are like into it. Like, I mean, I still get messages here and there from people, really nice stuff. Like, God, it just makes me so goddamn happy here.
Yeah, well, I was re-listening to the albums. I was re-listening and I posted a song. I posted "Drown Me Out," and I got a couple replies like, "Yo, this record still whips." So
yeah, man,
and it does. They really do hold up.
Living.
So I don't know. Is there anything else you want to ask me, or anything you want to tell anyone? Is there anything you need to tell me personally?
I feel very on the spot right now. I don't really know. Probably not.
No, that's cool.
Life's pretty peachy.
That's good, dude.
You're a great dude.
Thank you very much.
I'm very proud of you and all the hard work you've done in Blush Cameron.
Oh, thanks, man.
And it's nice to see you make your way in a new city.
Yeah.
And
I'm going to drop it all and just start podcasting.
I mean, I don't know if this is good or if anyone will find it interesting, but you know, you got to start somewhere if you want to do it.
No, I think, like, for real, it'd be... I've been thinking about,
I probably could have explained some of that stuff better.
No, I think
And like I
it's...
said, the timeline's definitely a little whacked.
No, I think it went
Like,
great. I think...
I kind of have like a piss brain when it comes to like chronological memory.
No, I mean, when people are interested, the people that listen to this are going to be listening because they're a fan. And when you're a fan of somebody, you can, anything they say is pretty much interesting, especially someone like you who is a little bit, off the radar and has been, more quiet. I think people will really dig how, no matter what you say, I think people will be excited to hear from you. So I think it'll be good.
I guess that's true. I guess nobody else has really talked about it since the band ended.
Yeah.
I mean, straight up, we don't really, none of us really talk to each other.
Yeah,
it's like kind of, I guess it's a little bit sad, but I mean,
it hasn't been that many years, really. I mean, in the grand scheme of things.
I mean, sometimes that's the way life goes.
Yeah. So, okay. Well, thanks for talking to me and thanks for doing this. I've been trying to do this podcast thing since, like, I don't know, 2018 is when Chris and I did an episode that we never posted.
Well, dude, I don't know if you know the news about him moving back to Michigan, but he's gonna be around.
Yeah. Yeah, I hit him up to do another try again episode because I think
you should definitely talk to Chris. You should, I mean, if you want to, like, talk about what you're trying to do with things here, I'm definitely willing to, like, bounce ideas around with you.
Yeah, I mean,
I don't know if you've come up with, like, a name, logo, or branding for any of this stuff, but
I'm thinking about just...
If you want to
we can
brainstorm.
Yeah, I'd love to hear what your opinion. I'm thinking about just calling it Blush Cameron's podcast.
All right, come on.
Is that bad?
Because I don't think it's necessarily bad, but like, I think you can come up with something stronger. Although it might behoove you to, like, just do a few and see what the flavor's like, and then decide.
Yeah, that's the other thing. I was thinking the smart way of doing this, I think, would be to record a batch of episodes and then release them, like weekly, like a series.
Yeah, definitely.
But then I have to wait
that shit.
I have to wait for the gratification, which is hard.
Yeah, so hard.
I got people lined up though. But yeah, I haven't really thought about the art for it or anything like that. I do think it's like something I really should keep doing because it's like I know so many people now that are down. I just think it'd be silly not to do it.
Sorry, my cat's really angry at me. She's yelling.
Oh.
Yeah, I think there's plenty of people that you can get on here to chat it up about music and art and life.
Yeah, and it's like at the level where it's just like just outside of like the kind of mainstream podcasts or like more bigger bands go on podcasts and stuff, but there aren't a lot of podcasts for like this level of DIY and whatever. But I think people would listen to it, so I don't know.
I think there's I mean, if there's enough of a following for people to show up to shows, there's enough of a following to get subscribers to a podcast.
Definitely.
Yeah, man.
All right. Well, I gotta go make a Craigslist transaction here in a minute.
What are you getting on Craigslist?
I'm selling some headphones that I got from my work's holiday party. The boss gave everybody headphones.
You're flipping your Christmas gifts.
Yeah, I really am. Yeah, I got a Mini K Keurig coffee maker.
Are you selling that too?
Yeah, I posted it, but
nice.
It hasn't no offers yet.
I've been meaning to list those Pokemon cards I got. I should do that today.
Yeah, I mean, that's going to be some nice cash there.
A decent amount. I
That's
was
crazy.
very surprised. Like, I couldn't believe it. But, anyways. Alright, I'll catch you later, man.
All right, dude. Thanks for chatting. I'll see you in the Discord.
Yeah, see you, dude.
See ya.